Welcome to the Underreported Stories podcast. I'm Chrissy Clark, and these are the 5 underreported stories that you need to know. Hey everyone, welcome back to Underreported Stories, where I cover the news that CNN, MSNBC, and Fox News fail to report on or don't report on enough. And today I'm joined by my friend, fellow journalist, fellow content creator, Andrew Chapados. Andrew is a reporter over at The Blaze. Is it the Unauthorized podcast that I listen to? Yes?
Unauthorized Opinions.
Unauthorized Opinions podcast. Love, love, love. We love a good unauthorized opinion here. So, yeah, super happy to have you on.
Thank you for the enthusiasm. I appreciate it. I also enjoy your show. Pretty much watching it at all times. Shower, car ride, really any time.
I love it. Thank you so much for listening, for watching. Means a lot. So, in full transparency with audience, we're recording this on Labor Day because I got a bachelorette party, okay? I gotta go be a basic bitch in Florida. But I texted you, Andrew, and I was like, hey, can you come on Labor Day? Because it's a holiday in the States. And you were like, what is Labor Day? You don't have that?
Labor Day here. It's Labor Day today. I work for an American company, so I don't know when the holidays always line up. Thanksgiving's different. Aren't you part Canadian or something?
Oh, I'm like full Canadian, like
okay,
was fully fucking born there.
So you don't know when I want to tell your audience these are lies. This is a character she's playing. She's actually a miserable person. If you've ever met her, she threatened me. That's all.
Who?
You.
Me? I threatened you?
Yeah.
With what?
Oh, letter opener.
I can't hear you. Say that again. For some reason,
letter opener?
The opener?
A letter opener.
When I almost stabbed you with a letter opener? When was this?
You know, in improv, you're supposed to say yes and, but you're really ruining it here. So let's just carry on with the show.
No, because I will not be slandered on my own podcast. Honestly, there was a point in time in my life where I was that crazy, where someone might believe this, Andrew.
All right,
you can't be so you're slandering me.
I didn't know. All hearsay, not submissible in court, Your Honor.
Okay. I can't stop laughing. That was freaking good. You got me there. Back to Labor Day. Do you guys have stupid holidays in Canada? I'm a bad Canadian. Speaking of Canada talk, horrible. Honestly, don't know when Thanksgiving is. One time I was working for a news outlet, and it will remain unnamed, but it was just this running joke at the company that I was a Canadian, and so we had Canadian Thanksgiving was like a holiday. Not at the company, but one of my bosses was like, oh, it's Canadian Thanksgiving. Like, you're taking the day off, right? And I was just like, yeah, I had no idea it was Canadian Thanksgiving. But I took the day off anyway. Totally lied about it. Whoops, sorry about that. But what is your favorite holiday is the most important question, I guess, here.
My favorite holiday, I mean, Christmas is too easy, so I won't go with that. But yes. Halloween is my favorite holiday, not for satanic reasons, but because I just like I like an old neighborhood where everything's done up and everyone's participating in it. That's the neighborhood I grew up in, which is Oshawa, Ontario, Canada. There was a great neighborhood where everybody decorated their houses. There was actually a really big house on one street corner that had a popcorn machine and everything. So a lot of participation in that is why I like it so much. But to answer your previous question of does Canada have really stupid holidays, yes, we have things called Family Day. That they basically want a holiday every month. And I think there might be at least one long weekend every month. And when you start to work for an American company, you realize how much more work ethic Americans have. No offense, Canada, but it's true.
Wait, what is Family Day? Like, what do you do? Do you spend it with your family?
Allegedly, but it's just a day off.
That feels lazy.
It is. I mean, and so some provinces had different holidays, like in Quebec, where my people are from, we have a stupid, day named after some French guy, right? But that wasn't a holiday in other provinces, so they came up with a holiday for that day. And then where some provinces have a holiday where Quebec doesn't have one, they basically mixed and matched until everybody had holidays on the same day, and I believe that turned out to be at least one per month. Maybe there's 1 or 2 months that don't have it, but a lot of long weekends happening up here.
This is why I have to be an imposter and deny my Canadian heritage for this fucking reason. It's so crazy. Absolute insanity. I do have a really pressing question for you, though. Are birthdays holidays?
Birthdays are not holidays. What?
Yeah, some people think it's like a full holiday. Like they have birthday week, birthday month.
No, that's stupid. You ever heard of, you know how Korean birthdays work?
No, I'm unfamiliar with
I heard about this like
it.
a year ago. So as soon as you're born in Korea, and anyone can fact check me on this because I'm probably wrong, but as soon as you're born in Korea, you turn 1. So you can be born on December 31st.
That's right.
And then on January 1st, you're 2.
That's right. I do remember hearing this that like you've lost a year basically because we go from like 0 to 1, and when you're like have completed your year, that's how old you are. But technically, I'm 27, but I'm in my 28th year, right?
I guess so. I guess it works how like the 17th and 18th century work in that sense. But wow, 28 times 1. I don't know. I'm just kidding.
Slander today. I could care less. But wow. I love it. Okay. Subject change because I guess I'm old as fuck. Speaking of actually things that did make me feel really old this past week. So I'm a big college football fan. I want to hear your take on American sports because this is such a fascinating topic always to talk about with my Canadian cousins. I'm a huge college football. I mean, I haven't really gotten into the NFL. In the past 2 years, my fiance has been bribing me. Every year he is forced to buy me Detroit Lions merch, and I will not be a Lions fan that season until I'm adequately bribed with cute clothing. But he came strong this year. But I've always been a Michigan State fan. That's where I went to college, and I felt really old when I was looking at our quarterback playing this year, and he was born in 2005, which means he's like 9 years younger than me, and he's in college. Oh my God, I want to blow my brains out. You're right, I am old.
Yeah, that happens a lot, especially if you play video games and you see their ages a lot. And it's something that temporarily, you just have to forget about it. You have to realize, oh, they're just kids, maybe they're millionaires now. And if you think about the fact they have these image and likeness deals now, I've been writing about this a lot. And the money they're making is actually insane. Like, you've got 18-year-olds who are coming in and they're getting like a $600,000 sponsorship from Raising Cane's or something like that, for example. And then what a lot of them do, if they're big enough stars, they just move schools after a couple of years and they're just collecting, fans from, let's say, Louisiana, and then move up to, Ohio, and they're collecting fans from that region, which is hundreds of thousands of people going to the games, and they're getting sponsorships from all over the country. So it's pretty lucrative now, and it's kind of nice to see the NCAA squirm in this position, how much they make versus how much they're actually willing to give the players, because it's still unequal. We're not talking about equity here. We're just talking about how a lot of the college programs make over $120 million per year on athletics, and they're just like, how we can't pay these kids like $50,000. This is insane. So it's a lot of good opportunities. But in terms of college football, I've been getting into it the last couple of years. I've always been into the NFL because the CFL sucks. I said it. All my Canadian fans are going to hate me today.
That's okay. Truth hurts, man. Truth freaking hurts. But if you had to pick a college team, what team would you root for?
I support Duke. Going back to college basketball days, I was going back to playing basketball when I was in high school and a little bit in college.
So
Duke was my team because of J.J. Redick. So they had a horrible football team back then, but since then they've done better. And that's who I support. My second choice is Texas Tech, also for basketball reasons.
Okay, well, I have a vendetta against both of those teams because Texas Tech ruined my senior year of college. But I'm not going to get into it, okay? I'm not going to rehash what should have been a Michigan State title, but that's okay. Let's just move past the sports talk and our complete and utter disagreement on this. Without further ado, let's get into the 5 underreported stories that you need to know. I want to start out with your story up first. So I'll give the audience a little bit of a rundown because the story's frickin' bats, and it also involves bats, kind of. A women's soccer team with 5 biological male players went undefeated and won the league's championship in Australia. over the course of the entire season, the team only had 6 goals scored against them. Again, entire season, only 6 goals were scored against all these men. The team is called the Flying Bats. And in order to be a flying bat, you must be a self-identified woman or a non-binary person. Andrew, how did you find this story? What the hell?
I think it has to do with, the Daily Mail covers a lot of this stuff. But, if you read Daily Mail articles, they're usually great, but they're also 700 years long. So you got to dig deep or just read through everything that the Daily Mail author writes. So I went looking through some Australian, soccer sites, and I believe their league there is like the top tier women's league. And this team was originally made for lesbians, which is ridiculous in itself, I guess. But over the years, as times have changed, we've had to accept the non-binaries and the transgenders, I guess, onto the team. So now, as you read their description, they are accepting men. And
wait, this was a league for lesbians?
No, the team was specifically made for lesbians in a women's league.
Oh, okay. But now, I was reading your report. It says one of the athletes is a 6'2" man named Riley Dennis, born Justin Dennis. And Dennis injured a female player and sent that player to the hospital. Like, how is that appropriate? I talk about this from the female point of view all the time. I'm like, how in the world do women allow this to happen to themselves? But also, like, how do you take this from the male point of view? Is this not like the most beta thing in the world to do, to just beat the shit out of girls?
Yeah, exactly. And we saw this in the Olympics too, with the alleged chromosomal anomalies that we're working with. But, in sports, injuries will happen, and you have to take that with a grain of salt. But on the other hand, for a guy who's kicking women in the shins, it's more likely that he's going to break their legs. And when the people in the league got together, the officials, the managers, and the owners of these teams, when they got together, they said they're injuring players. One guy says, I think 25 players on my team dropped out, so literally the whole team said we're not going to play against this guy or these guys, which is the right thing to do. And the league basically said that's too bad, we can't be mean. Isn't that what it all comes down to? And this is a point I've been making, I think, for at least a year and a half now. So many of the rules that are governing our society these days are based on not wanting to appear mean. Or we can't tell the man he can't fight or play against women because that would be mean. We can't we can't have these political opinions, that would be mean. We can't kick people out of the country because that would be mean. And from a male perspective, it's just like, as a man, and it also goes to like the Star Wars and these other shows that are fully injecting trans ideology into it. As a man, if you're writing this script to a show or you're making these league rules, it's hard to imagine who the guy is that's like, we got to put the transgender person in there. We got to make sure guys can play against girls. It's a way for men to get close to women. It's a way for creepy men to say, I'm on your side, ladies. Trust me. Believe in me. I'm trustworthy. I believe in what you believe. So don't let any men who work for Vox or anything tell you differently. They're doing it to be creepy because they want to gain your trust.
I'm obsessed with that point of view. I've never heard that before, but it's really spot on. I've been saying something similar-ish to the point where, like, never trust the men that are like, I'm a woman's rights advocate. That usually means they're like beating their wife behind closed door. If you have to advocate for it that hard, then you're probably compensating for something, right? That's just how I've always seen it. Maybe that's a little fucked up, but we can say mean things, But also back to the story, the Australia point of it. Maybe a week ago, I put up a video titled Tickle versus Giggle, which sounds like the most innocuous, like, maybe gay / pornographic thing you could possibly say. But it's a crazy lawsuit out of Australia where a biological male who identifies as a female named Roxanne Tickle sued this woman's only app, and the Australian court ruled in the man's favor against this organization called Giggle, which was just supposed to be an app for girls to find roommates. And I think I see your point of view in that, where it's like the men who were trying to infiltrate this, like, they're just creepy, regardless of their sexual orientation or whatever they believe they are. Like, it's just downright creepy to want to be in women's space or be so vehemently or like adamant, that you have to be in a woman's space. Why is it always the Western countries like Canada, America, Australia? Why are we always the first to fall?
They say when countries or empires start messing around with gender and sexuality and openly, flagrantly, orgies and stuff like that, like ancient Rome and Greece and stuff like that, that's right when it's about to fall. So I think it's a symbol that we've run out of things to battle internally when we've got all these problems where we're reaching out to other places to find issues, whether it's the Middle East or Ukraine and Russia and gender and sexuality. We're looking for all these problems. And some countries are just built on a different basis than some countries. Australia, which is a literal country founded by convicts who were bad enough to be sent all the way across the world, you'd expect them to be a little bit more resistant to things, but they got their guns taken away, and I do think that's a big factor, and I credit a friend of mine named Gary Sheffield Jr. for telling me about this during COVID times, where Australia and Canada were locking people up for not following the rules, and he was like, that's not going to happen in America because we have guns. So cultures they get weak over time when there's erosion in their beliefs, and there's erosion with the common man, and at this point in Australia, if you accept, getting sent to a literal camp because you didn't follow the flight restrictions, then there's probably not much that the government's not going to get away with. Plus the accents have something to do with it, I think. Hey, you didn't want to let me in your locker tonight. It'd be a shame if you went to court over that. So it causes a real problem for me. The Australian accents, the mullets, I know my hair's close to that now, but they're a little bit behind.
Yeah, you're one to talk, right? With your funny accent. I still get made fun of for my Canadian accent, even though I don't think I have one. But apparently I do when I spend time with the damn knuckleheads. But speaking of freedoms, I think you hit that on the head, right? It's freedoms being devalued. And we're actually seeing that in our next story. You teed it up perfectly. There's a German court that has ordered a podcast to delete an episode where the host referred to a balding person by he, him pronouns. Now, you're probably like, duh, this person is a man. The host of the podcast should use he, him pronouns. Not the case. And because the hosts allegedly misgendered this person, they face a €250 fine and jail time if they refuse to take this podcast down. It's called Haas and Hoff. What the hell? We're going to get this podcast taken down too, apparently. I think this is to your point, a little bit of where is the line on free speech versus being nice? And it's probably, I do want to hear your take, but it's probably not a problem that men have as much as women do.
See, the problems I think all string together. When you start allowing basically anything to happen, the government's going to take these steps. And I don't know who these guys are, but I'm willing to bet that some of their views have been, they've been willing to, kick the ball down the road or kick the can down the road on a lot of different things. I'll look it up
on YouTube while you're talking.
Yeah, and I mean, Germany was we'll call them the grandfather of mass migration a few years ago, when they started letting 1 million people in a single year. And, they have ultra left-wing views. They're like, oh, we don't need Russian gas, and all of a sudden, they're in an energy shortage. This sort of stuff is what leads to, a fascist group being voted in, and they can say that it's alt-right and everything being voted in the EU right now or in other parts of the European Union. It's not far right, what people would say in North America, but it's right-wing in the very least. And this is what the kind of things are that lead to this sort of reaction from people. Telling a guy on a podcast that he can't call a balding guy a guy is just literally silencing somebody. It's like your car breaks down in the middle of the road, and you're just like, your car's not broken down, I'm sorry, no matter what you're saying, you can still drive it. It's just an obvious lie, and it's being enforced by the state. And how does the state enforce things? By a gun. So that's why people have wanted to die for freedom of speech. And I think Germany has kicked the can down the road for about a decade or two now excuse me, and now they're facing the repercussions for it.
It's not even just Germany writ large. Of course, I think it's a problem, but I don't see in any way that the German government is sitting there going, I wonder what Haas and Hopf are posting on their podcast today. I would fucking hope they have something better to do other than sit on YouTube and watch a guy with 311,000 subscribers, okay? Not that that's an awesome number. I'm just saying, it's not like these are it's not like it's Andrew Tate. I don't even know. It's just weird. I think that the offense of it comes probably from the individual. So this was talked about on the podcast. This individual comes and they can probably file these weird lawsuits. We actually saw it during the Olympics where the fat DJ at that really offensive opening ceremonies, that person filed a lawsuit saying that people online are going to get sued because they said mean things about this person on the internet. This is just a weird thing you can do in Europe where you can file incident reports over offenses. And I'm so sorry, but actually, I'm not sorry. If you're offended by this, you need to get your validation from something else, okay? Other than the internet telling you that you're a man or you're not a man. I don't need, if somebody used he, him pronouns for me, I'd laugh because internally, I'm very self-aware that I'm a woman, okay? I don't need your validation. So please, Andrew, that's what I'm saying. Please start calling me he, him, all right? Thank you. Also, this just tags on to what's happening with France with that Telegram founder. Did you see that story?
I did.
Crazy. Like, what is happening with free speech? It's not just Germany. It's all of Europe. And like I said, with the Olympics, this is where you could put those, that's where the Olympic committees were filing these lawsuits or I guess incident reports of sorts with the police. Like, is there just no free speech there anymore? I'm just lost.
Well, there never was, technically, just like there isn't in Canada, and the United States stands alone. And in regards to the Olympics, the boxers there, the one from Algeria filing these reports and also filing the lawsuit, I'm naming Elon Musk and Donald Trump. We better extradite them. This is going to force the courts in Germany and France to come up with an actual definition of what a female is, which is something you would have never thought of, in the yesteryear of 2016 or 2013. But now they're going to have to define it to determine whether or not this person is saying something defamatory to these people. And if the courts determine that being a woman is whatever you say it is, then that's when the society will collapse. Because then you can just make anything up. And as long as you get a person, it's going to just erode truth. As long as you get a person in a high-seated judge's position or a high court position that will do political activism, you're screwed. And I think that we've noticed that in the United States as well with, Trump indictments. That's where the power seems to lie, and I don't think a lot of people pay attention to this, where you can get an activist judge who will determine, based on their own political leanings, in this case, what a woman is. And there's no definition for this before because it was never needed. But if you start determining, what's a hate crime and what a woman is at a national or a federal level, then you're pretty much screwed because they're going to start building precedent on that, and that's going to be really hard to overturn. So I think people need to focus more on who these judges are. And then to quickly plug in another story to that, Elon Musk's battle in Brazil, they've been doing a good job at naming the judge that wants to ban them for speech there. So I think whoever decides what a woman is in Germany should probably be in the spotlight, or in France.
Yeah, no, that's such a good point. And I was saying to my audience, again, if you guys have not watched my video on Tickle versus Giggle, it's so worth your time because it really explains not only why this is happening in Australia, but how this could very well happen in the US. We are so close to that. There was a decision in the US Supreme Court called Bostock, which was really just about whether you can be gay and be employed, like whether or not sexual orientation can hinder you in employment right now. And of course, the court ruled against that. But they took it a step further and they kind of started legislating from the bench where they said that you can also not discriminate based on gender identity. So if you can't discriminate in jobs based on gender identity, why can you discriminate or be defamatory against gender identity in anything? It's a very slippery slope. I'm fully aware that that's the slippery slope argument. But you know what? Phyllis Schlafly in like the 70s and 80s was making the slippery slope argument about men being in women's bathrooms, and look where we are today. So I don't think it's invalid for that reason. But anyway, for time purposes, let's move on to our next story. We're going to take a little trip north of Europe for this next story. A reporter for a mainstream media outlet reportedly admitted he has acted as a Ukrainian spy. Adam Zivo works for the National Post, which is one of Canada's biggest mainstream media outlets, and he posted on X that he was trying to gain intelligence for Ukraine through a Chinese spy. Now, Andrew, you wrote this story. You brought it to my attention. Can you give us some more info? Like, just explain the nuances, because they're making it out to be less nuanced than it actually is.
So it's an absolutely crazy story, and I can't believe every outlet in Canada is not talking about this. A guy who works for one of the biggest newspapers, websites, whatever, it was a newspaper in Canada, the National Post, who is a gay Ukrainian man, went over to Ukraine to see his boyfriend, who I guess is a Ukrainian guy, and a Chinese guy came and started talking to him, and they made plans to meet up. Read between the lines of that what you will. He never said why they're meeting up. The guy started acting weird in text messages to him, which caused the reporter Zevo to start looking him up on LinkedIn and do a little, internet search about him, and a lot of weird things that you probably wouldn't do if you were just going to meet somebody, and checking if his photos matched his LinkedIn profile, and he found that he couldn't possibly have gone to this school at this time, tra-la-la-la. He ends up meeting with him anyways, I believe, and, no, wait, that's not what happened. He goes, he calls off the meeting, right? He takes his compiled report, he goes directly to the Ukrainian military. He says, guys, this is what the intelligence have gathered about this guy. I think he's a spy. And the funny thing is he spoke to Media Matters, who actually broke this story. The crazy Media Matters actually did a good story.
Dang, Media Matters actually journalisming.
Yeah, it was strange to come to terms with that. But anyways, so they said in the report after they spoke to this guy that he spent an entire day using a translation app trying to convince Ukrainian guards what he was talking about. So eventually he gave them all his information, like he compiled an intelligence packet. And then they decided, let's set up a sting together. This journalist is like, I'm going to engage in espionage.
Wait, he actually set up the sting?
Yes, him and the Ukrainian government set up a sting together. So now you are doing espionage for a foreign nation. And his reason was because I wanted to make Odessa in Ukraine safe, because that's where my boyfriend lives. So I don't know about you, if you would ever go to another country and just be like, I need to make this country safe and do spy work because I like somebody. That's really strange. So I think there's something else going on there. But so he meets with the guy who ends up coming with his wife. So maybe there was some miscommunication there. And he describes the Ukrainian intelligence agency as waiting outside in a van while he's in the restaurant with this guy, trying to get him to, it's like The Sopranos. You're trying to get this guy to say incriminating things on a wire. They have a really weird conversation. And then he says that the wife brings him out a tray of brownies from the restaurant, which is another weird thing to do at a restaurant, and asks him to eat one. And he obviously thinks it's drugged. I'm paraphrasing here. And the Chinese people won't eat one either. He says eventually the woman takes a little bite, but not a significant one, but he still doesn't want to do it, and they all eventually go their separate ways. And it's never confirmed whether or not these people were spies or not. So they don't get any incriminating evidence. Within days, these people are gone out of the country. And then he writes about this on X, and he talks about how strange it was that he's experiencing this, and the thing that he's replying to on X was actually post by the Canadian intelligence services that said, be careful of being coaxed into things by foreign people. They might be secret agents, essentially. And he's like, well, that actually happened to me one time. Let me tell you guys about my time being a secret agent in Ukraine. And he goes and tells the story. All the while, he's still a writer for the National Post. He says that they knew about it, the Canadian intelligence knew about it, the Ukrainian government knew about it. He writes fluff pieces for Ukraine, or at least clearly in support of Ukraine, and nobody's talking about this, and nobody says that he shouldn't be keeping his job, or that he should be fired or investigated for something. So now this National Post outlet has admitted that they do undercover secret agent work for foreign nations, and they want us to trust them. Can you trust? If CNN was just like, we've been doing undercover investigations on behalf of the Russian government, don't think anything about it, people will be like, what the hell is wrong with you? We can't trust you even more now. But this is just being brushed under the rug by them. It was like 2 days after he posted that story that he wrote a new piece talking about how great Ukraine is. It's insane.
Okay, I have like 3 parts that I want to dive into. First, this is an issue I've been talking about for so long. It's like this weird self-importance that journalists feel because they're like, literally J-list celebrities in their eyes. Like, they have to be important. Like, they have to be so cool and like, I'm part of the war in Ukraine and Russia. You won't believe this. Like, no, you're a nobody, and that's totally fine. Like, just accept that you don't need to be, not everybody needs to be fucking famous. Oh my gosh. Like, it's this weird obsession that journalists have of like inserting themselves into the narrative. Like, you're just here to report what you're seeing or like make a couple of people laugh. It's not that serious. But I guess my real question for you is like, of course, you don't want your journalists being involved in like freaking espionage. That's insane. But what does Canada, if anything, contribute financially? Like, are y'all like financing this war like we are? I don't even know anything about that.
To a much smaller scale. I think the number is only a couple billion, or like 500 million. But the Conservatives, think of the Conservatives here as basically a conservative or Republican rhino, where they can't, they say all the right things, but they can't for the life of them not support Ukraine. Oh, Ukraine, we have to love Ukraine. Exactly, we have to support these things. Don't you get it? We have to give them your money. So there's support from both sides of the government. Of course, they can be unified on that, and it's definitely still insane. But for this guy to think that he needs to engage in this, how do you not think about that? How that looks at all? It's like, choose any other country, but for Ukraine, it's okay. So I think there's something weird going on there.
Yeah, that's definitely weird. I think if your country is not that this story is ever okay, but the fact that your country is actively giving money to another country and then your job is to report to the people, the taxpayers that are funding this war that seems to have no exit strategy, that you can't just be an honest broker in this. Instead, you're writing fluff pieces. Like, that's not journalism. Does the National Post write that it's an op-ed, or is it this considered like journalism?
No, I don't think he's writing op-eds. I only read 2 of his articles, but they're just basically, this is why Ukraine needs these weapons, this is why Ukraine winning the war is good, that sort of thing. I mean, I would call it fluff. Other people might call it journalism, but it's quite obvious he's on the side of Ukraine. So I guess if you're outright saying that in your articles, which they are not, of course, and I think that is deserving of a label when you write these articles now, Adam. I did spy work for the Ukraine. It should be at the top of the article in bold, but they're never going to do that because for certain topics like this, it's okay. How could you disagree with that? How could you disagree that Ukraine isn't deserving of all of our love and support? That's the mindset here. Same thing with transgenderism. It's not political, it's just the right thing. When a Catholic school down the street from me raises a trans flag, it's not political, you guys, it's just love.
It's so weird. And back to the Ukraine thing, like, it's not a winnable war. I mean, that's what irks me about it. Like, naturally, it's not like a love or what. It's just like, yeah, I don't want Russia to like overtake. Russia is not good. I don't think they should just like come in and intrude on a sovereign country. This is not cool. Okay. But also, let's be realistic. There has to be some sort of off-ramp. And if we're shelling out millions and millions, if not billions of dollars, weapons, lives that are being lost in these wars, I just can't stand this idea of like, we just need to back Ukraine and like put Russia in a corner. That's not going to happen. Let's like, be realistic about what's going on in foreign policy. And the fact that this guy, Adam Zivo, again, let's repeat his name as many times as possible. Adam Zivo is out there writing journalistic pieces on this war when in fact nothing that he's done has showcased that, in fact actually everything he's done has showcased that he's got a vendetta to keep funding this war and to keep losing lives, even though they're not our soldiers. It could be our soldiers, you never know. But I just think this is trash. Journalists, we need to have a real freaking standard for journalists. I miss the days, even when people were, even when CNN has always been liberal, I just miss the days when I didn't know it,
She wants to go back into the Matrix, people. Tap her back in. The Patriots will be in control. This time, she wants to go in blind.
Oh my gosh. Speaking of a story that I hope will red pill some people, I want to move on.
McDonald's is the only people trying with their prices, okay?
I know. Okay, for anybody who's in the listening audience, you guys have just got to come. I don't think the show is as good unless you can watch Andrew and I be idiots together. You have to see it for yourself. Okay, like I said, moving on to our next story. This is great. So Kamala Harris, obviously running as the Democratic president in America. Freaking crazy. She's a bunch of old accounts of her are starting to get unearthed as, you know, Republicans haven't had a lot of time to go back and just kind of like look through her stuff because we didn't think we were running against her until like 5 seconds ago. So people were digging through her 2003 first ever run for office. And in that, they found that she reportedly violated campaign finance rules. So a little bit of information here. She signed a commitment. So this wasn't by law, but she signed this ethical commitment to stay within a $211,000 spending limit. Very specific, very weird. And she blew past that limit by almost $92,000. So she spent upwards of $300,000 and wound up with a $34,000 penalty for this. And at the same time, she was reportedly inflating her prosecutorial record. And she had to walk back in statements during that 2003 campaign about how many cases she had prosecuted at that time. Now, in all honesty, I'm okay to cast away the minor flubs, especially in politics. Like, I hate admitting it. It's sad to say, but it's normal for politicians to embellish their records. It's the violating the finance laws for me. How did no one flag this sooner? And how come this is just like, okay, I need people to get red-pilled by this?
No matter what the Democrats do, it will always be okay. They will never be punished, and they fail upwards just like Kamala did. So what if she dropped out of the primaries in 2020 before the first round was completed because she had less than 1% of support? Who cares? You can be the vice president. Oh, you didn't do anything and nobody likes you? Okay, you can be the presidential nominee. As long as you're willing to say and do whatever the machine tells you to do, then you're going to get promoted in leftist politics, and you're going to get pushed up as a person that they can trust to spout the talking points whenever the time comes. That's why when she's, sometimes she's black-laced, sometimes she's the first Indian senator of all time. We will mention that her father had slaves, even though we're all supposed to be against that. We will mention that nobody likes her. We will mention that she never went to the border. All these things, as long as you say what they're willing to do, then you are going to succeed in left-wing politics. And this goes right down to municipal levels and townships and everything. As long as you say that there's an investigation into racism or you need to put more equality going forth, then you're going to get some group who says, that's great, this helps me get more federal grants, this helps me get DEI and ESG money, and that's what matters. So Kamala, whether she did this or not, I'm going to side on the air caution on the side of did it and knew about it, hearsay, of course. She will not face any repercussions. This cannot happen because the House of Cards falls once the Democrats start saying that they've, been wrong about a few things.
Yeah. And, I will say, I'm going to kind of not backtrack. I agree with everything I've said wholeheartedly. But at the same time, I do think Republicans in general look at Kamala Harris of 2020 and they think that she's the same person as she is in 2024. I gotta say, I was saying this on Newsback this morning, confidence is a hell of a drug. In 2020, she was sitting there acting kind of like the freshman in high school, like, I'm part of the cool kid crowd, like, I'm pulling in the top 10, I'm cool, pay attention to me. And she was vying for all this attention and like trying to prove herself. Now, out of nowhere, she just woke up one morning and was like, I'm the presidential candidate. And she's a whole team of infrastructure behind her. And sometimes when you're told you're awesome, you start to believe you're awesome, even if you suck balls like Kamala does, both theoretically and apparently in real life. But for real, I do think that she has become a more formidable candidate than when we initially saw her as VP, because she didn't have the confidence and the infrastructure behind her that we see she has now. When you look at the polling in America, if you were a betting man, I don't know if you are, I don't know what you do on your weekends. If you're a betting man, who are you putting money on?
Constantly betting. I'm going down to the high school soccer games, degenerate gambler, and yelling at kids. No, I would still bet on Trump unless they cheat, which we all know is a possibility. In terms of Kamala's newfound confidence, I would tend to agree. I think they've pushed her up through social media, and they did that TikTok campaign for her that she's, what's the word they used? Do we remember?
Brat.
She's brat. Within 24 hours, they use a British girl who's 30 but pretending that she's 12 to push the song about her. Charlie, Roman numerals rule. And they are very good at concocting this idea that this person's popular, and yeah, I'm sure that has an effect on her, and it's very inflated because they have the power of social media, the Snapchats, the Instagrams, the TikToks, and they have the power of the late night talk shows who can have her on if they want to, and they can have on different Democrats who will say she's awesome, and they have that power as long as the veil is still pulled in front of these people's faces. And for most teenagers and young adults under like 22 or college age, the veil is still very much there, because they don't know any better, because they shouldn't know any better because they're children. But when the entertainment apparatus tells you somebody's awesome and Brad and so she's so fucking cool, oh my god, Kamala, holy shit, and they're probably gonna think, oh, maybe there's something to this.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think the only thing that could get her is the border crisis, because we're seeing crazy stories out of this. This final story came to me from a follower on TikTok, messaged me. It was like, you've got to look into this story, sent it to me. From ABC News, nonetheless. I've not been hearing about this at all, but a new internal watchdog report from our Department of Homeland Security found that in the past 5 years, so this was kind of the end of the Trump administration into all of the Biden administration, more than 32,000 unaccompanied migrant children, so kids that have illegally come into the U.S., have gone missing. The U.S. government cannot find these kids at all. So for anybody that's not familiar with how the border process works, basically people will come up to the border, they kind of turn themselves in, and if they're under the age of 18, our Department of Health and Human Services is responsible for the custody of these kids, okay? So they're taken into HHS custody, and HHS is supposed to find them either a shelter or a qualified sponsor to live with. And we are just not doing that. We're just kind of like letting these kids go. 32,000 kids, okay? And so I think when stories like this come up about Kamala, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is awful, because all of me knows that the Biden administration has been saying, and now leaking into Kamala's campaign, she has actively said this, that she might be in favor of building the border wall now. Like, what the fuck? But then also, it's crazy, but then also she's not going to separate families. Okay, so you don't want to be, back to our point, she doesn't want to be perceived as mean, okay? But when she's not mean, it results in 32,000 unaccompanied minors just being let into the country, and who knows what's happening to them. They could be in great situations, they could be human trafficked for all we know. Is the government abetting human trafficking right now? We have no answer, and the HHS is now saying, yeah, possibly.
The idea of not separating families at the border is absolutely insane for the reasons of child trafficking and drug smuggling and everything, and the fact that it's a federal crime to enter the country illegally. Now you can say that if they're turning themselves in as asylum seekers, that's something that should be taken into consideration, but the proper thing to do when you're an asylum seeker is go to the very next country that you are from for asylum, which we all know none of them do. And none of these countries hold them to this standard. So the key, I think, here is tell them not to come. Tell them that they're not going to get in if they come. And then they watch how the people stop coming. And I know it's like a Trump trope to say that, but the raw numbers, the raw data from the Customs and Border Patrol show how insane these numbers actually were under Kamala. You know, under Biden, who's in charge of this country? But, yeah, it's where the borders are, which didn't exist either, by the way. And so within like the first 2 years, they had already, like doubled Trump's numbers. It's absolutely insane. They're the worst ever at it, and they just really want people to come in so they can vote for them. And, you've got policy in California of giving them houses, money to buy their first home, which Nancy Pelosi said on Bill Maher that she agrees with, and when he pressed her on it, she was just like, well, I would prefer that they were citizens. So I don't know if the idea here is to collapse the system entirely, but they're well on their way to doing that. And when it comes to releasing 32,000 children into the country, there's obviously something suspicious about that. Are they meeting up with cartel representatives across the border? Is it other Latin gangs that they're being purchased by? Who are these children going to on the other side of the border? What percentage can we say are meeting up with family members? Even if it was 50%, what's happening to the rest of them. It has rings of Haiti, if we recall that story. If not, maybe it's something you can do a bit on if you look into that. And this is just another thing that people are going to say, that there's just rampant child trafficking going on, whether it's true or not. And I think we saw, whether it was publicized, just starting to be publicized under Trump or not, there was a lot of child trafficking stings that got publicized during the Trump administration. And that just goes to show you how much of that stuff actually goes on. 32,000 children didn't just disappear.
Yeah. No, and I went to the southern border when I was, I think it would have been 2021. I was down there, and I'll just never forget watching. I was standing there. It was probably like midnight, 1 a.m. And this is like when most of the traffic on the border happens. And there was this larger Hispanic woman with a small, skinny, stick-thin ginger kid. And she was claiming this kid as her child. No. And so my intuition was up about it. And so I wrote a note on my phone, and then I asked one of the border security agents who was kind of taking us around. I asked him later, I said, I saw this interaction. And she goes, or I saw that interaction. Do you know anything about it? And he says, I don't know specifics on this case, but what we have seen, generally speaking, is you'll see so many different adults, and you'll see the same handful of kids. So you'll see a kid go across 5 or 6 times because the parents cannot pay to get into the country, because it costs like $10,000 to bribe the cartels to get you into the country. So if you can't pay, you can send your kid across to help get other people in, and that will pay off your debts. That's trafficking of children. Like, I don't know what else that is. And when you don't want to stop that, that's just the trafficking of children. I don't know how else to say it, Andrew. I don't know how to say it.
Did you do the ARC photo op at the border with the hands through the chain link fence?
My all-white outfit. Yeah, my all-white outfit was actually at the dry cleaners that week, so I couldn't bring it.
That's fair.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe next time I head down.
That's very scary. Sorry. Yeah, it's very scary and very sad that it's just, hey, try with this family. We're going to use your child as a pawn so that maybe, it's if you drop your kid over the fence at Six Flags, do they get to stay? I say no, but it's very hard to, after a certain amount of time passes, I don't know how long that would be, but after a long period of time of that child being in the country, it's hard to say, go back. But if you can connect them to a family back there, then I say send them back.
All right. Well, speaking of horrible things, do you guys know how horrible your tap water is? And even your Brita filter water? It's fucking disgusting, guys. Water quality is going down the drain in America, and if you want to ensure that you're getting the highest quality water while also supporting your values, look no further than Freedom 2.0. It is like H2O, but with the freedom, yeah? Freedom 2.0 is an America First company dedicated to bringing you high-quality, reverse osmosis water, and the best part is you can set up a subscription so you never go thirsty. Check the link in the bio to help support this show. Okay, speaking of thirsty, Andrew, we have some videos to watch and react to. This is my first thirsty take I found. It's quite interesting. This girl got on, and I apologize to my viewers for the language. This is a word not even I would use, but she does. Let's watch this.
I absolutely went into marriage knowing I was going to become a divorcee. There was no question in my mind. I knew at some point we would get divorced. The only question mark was when. I thought, when I'm 40. Maybe I'd get that title. Maybe then I'd earned it, 10 years down the track. Because I think 10 years in a marriage, that's a pretty good innings in this day and age. That's like a good run. Turns out it was just a 3. In the end, that's all we kind of reached our limit with. But, still got the title in the end. And obviously, I don't want to get married ever again. However, double divorcee is a term that I'm living for. Like, that is cunt, isn't it? Oh, yeah, I'm a double divorcee. Bitch, what? That's Slayana. Almost would be worth getting married again.
It's the accent.
Oh, no. I don't want to have a double divorcee.
Oh, my gosh. I just don't why are you getting married if you don't want to be married long-term to this I don't understand how you can walk down the aisle and be like, as somebody who's literally getting married in like not even like a month, and I'm just thinking like, oh yeah, I'm just going to walk down the aisle and be like, yeah, I'm spending all this money and time and energy and effort or whatever to just divorce this person. What the fuck?
Yeah, if anyone marries this woman or is thinking about marrying this woman and they see that video, that's going to cause a large problem, and she can say, "Oh, it's just a jerk," and then I'm going to say, I don't believe you, because this is the problem. Thinking that this stuff is normal and making these videos is normal, and then the idea is we have to now convince men that this is a normal thing that you should be okay with. If you recall, like, the Jonah Hill story, where he asked his wife, or who, I don't know if they were engaged or whatever, to take down a bunch of her slutty photos, and she was like, "How dare you?" And her friends saying, "Oh, you have to just accept that." This is weird stuff that you're just asking people to accept it. If they don't, well, then I guess you can be alone forever. That is the alternative that they seem to be pushing. Accept weird behavior, or else you should be alone, I guess. I don't know.
No, you're absolutely right. It's just a problem of, like, men are attracted to the very vivacious, outgoing women, and those women tend to be, and I'm not trying to stereotype, but it's true, like, they tend to be a little bit more on the feminist side because they don't like being constrained or being told to, like, be a little bit more calm or submissive. And so it's really easy. Even you'll see conservative women, like, they don't want men to tell them how to act. And I think you come to it with time, and it's not to, like, let men tell you how to act. It's trying to, gauge how to create a healthy communicative relationship. And you're not going to do that by wanting to get divorced for 3 times because it sounds cunty. What the hell?
Did you participate in the "I'm not a blah blah blah, but here's how I look like" photo thing?
No, what was this? I think I might have missed this challenge.
It was, you remember when Paulina Luna, the pictures of her, the congresswoman?
Yes.
And they said, the things were, "I'm a conservative, but I don't post bikini pictures, but here's what I look like anyways." Basically just like a selfie.
Yeah.
And the idea here is, I'm not posting racy pictures, but still pay attention to me. That's what I gather from that, and that's how men see it. And, I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir to a lot of your viewers, but for a woman like this is what people mean when they say that obviously this stuff is for attention. Like, if you can't just not post this on social media, there's a reason why you're posting it, because you want them to think you're funny for saying cunty, yeah. Like, just admit it. Admit it, and it'll be a lot easier.
So true. Okay, this is our last video, and it has to fall into my favorite segment. Is it real or is it satire?
Is it real or is it satire?
You cannot be serious!
I'm 42, I'm child-free, it's the weekend, I'm in Atlantic City, party time!
Yeah, I think the embarrassing part was saying you're having fun in Atlantic City.
Hey, I've never been there. I'd like to be there. But another trend, guts out, everybody. This new trend of, ladies, let's just have our guts out. Let's not do it. Nobody wants to see my crop top. Not since Chris Farley were men doing this, but we don't need our guts out. My lady watches a lot of these shows, and we're just gut city, everybody. There's body shaming exists, and you don't want to see it on me. I don't want to see it on you. I don't know. I think this one, it's so short that I'm going to say that it's probably fake and satire, because the real ones, like that comedian, I think it's Chelsea Handler, who does these whole extravagant bits about how awesome it is to be alone at 55 or whatever she is, I think they put more effort into that. I think that's a girl who just thought that was funny, and, she doesn't have any really beliefs put behind that. I think that when they are trying to make an actual statement about how being alone in 55 is awesome, they put way more thought into that, because it's theater kids in the spotlight. They need the attention. They need to be weird. All this woman here is guilty of is what I call guts out, which I think should be a t-shirt that you start selling. The crop top.
Put it on the merch line for the hats. Anti-guts.
I'm so terrible.
No, it's so funny. So I went and researched this, because when I first saw this, and I work on the side for Turning Point, so Turning Point will have me make a couple of videos a week for them, and I pitched this as, like, I want to react to this video, and my editor there was like, no, like, that's satire. And I'm like, oh, okay, so I'm now clearly this is actually great. I teed it up. I've had this in my notes. I'm like, oh, this is real or is this satire? No, I went and researched. If you look at this girl's profile, everything she does is in this realm. She goes on TV and she kind of talks about, she calls herself the bold lib. This is apparently real. And we're not supposed to take her very seriously. That's what, if I posted this video and everybody in the comments was like, people just take Angela too seriously. I'm like, okay, well, is it comedy or is it real? Because if that's actually your life, it's not comedy. I mean, it's a little funny, but it's not satire. It's real. And so I'm going to err on the side of this is real. This is really what this girl does and believes. But we're also not supposed to take her too seriously.
Well, if that's the goal for us to not know, then I guess maybe she's accomplished that. I wouldn't think that somebody who does, purely like 7-second TikToks for a living has that much artistic depth to be like, I'm going to make it so people don't know and call myself the lib and something. It's either full-blown sarcasm or she really believes in things. And I think that if she's being invited on leftist things as opposed to right-wing things, then she's probably supporting it in some regard. Because they wouldn't allow a person who's denigrating the be alone forever, show off your gut, and get 76 abortions. They wouldn't allow anything other than that to be promoted. So I think in some states the limit is 16 abortions, but wherever she's from, probably 76. In honor of the Foundation of America, I think.
Dad, oh my gosh. I'm just going to leave it there because I can't top it. I can't do it any better. Andrew Chapados, thank you so much for coming on the pod. Where can people watch you?
They can watch me at Andrew Says on YouTube. All my links are at andrewsaystv.com, and I write for theblaze.com. And you can find me on Twitter or X at Andrew Says TV as well.
All right, we're going to link them below. Thank you so much, friend.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for tuning into the Underreported Stories podcast. Be sure to subscribe and download this podcast or share it with a friend. If you like what you heard, please leave a comment about how funny and intelligent I am. Thank you, friends. Bye.